Why is it that the deeper you walk on the path of practice and mindfulness, the more misunderstood you become by those you love? Why does greater light often lead to deeper misperception? This is not an isolated phenomenon. It is a subtle and seldom discussed law of inner transformation. When you begin the journey inward, you touch something pure, truthful, and luminous within yourself. But as that light begins to radiate outward, it inevitably triggers the shadows in others, not because they are unkind, not because they wish to hurt you, but simply because they are not yet ready to receive the new frequency you embody. It is like someone stepping out of a dark cave into bright sunlight. They squint, recoil, even retreat, not because the sun is wrong, but because their eyes have yet to adjust. You have become that sunlight. Without intending to. You speak differently, think differently, see life differently, and those who were once familiar with the old version of you become unsettled. When you choose silence over reaction, they call you cold. When you prefer meditation over gatherings, they say you've become distant. When you no longer respond with anger, they think you're being fake. But in truth, you are simply stepping out of an old vibrational field. And such a departure is rarely met without misunderstanding. Even the Buddha, before enlightenment, was met with resistance from his own father and estrangement from his friends when he chose the monastic path. But the Buddha did not blame them. He understood that at each level of consciousness, people can only perceive a portion of the truth. So if you are hurting because your loved ones no longer seem to understand you, pause and reflect. Are you expecting them to meet you from a place you've already left behind? Are you seeking empathy from those who have never faced their own darkness? This is the paradox of the spiritual path. The farther you walk, the fewer people accompany you. And the deepest pain is not being misunderstood by strangers, but by those you love the most. Yet this too is part of the path. As the tree grows, old branches must bend and break for new ones to reach the sun. You are doing the same within your consciousness. And in this process, certain relationships will fracture, not because you stopped loving them, but because your energies are no longer aligned. When you begin to live in accordance with the Dharma, with selflessness, impermanence, and non-attachment, you no longer act from ego, from woundedness, or from the need to be right or recognized. And that is why people feel you've become foreign. They speak to someone who has completely shifted their frequency, yet still expect the old version of you to respond. So tension arises. The more silent you are, the more they are unsettled. The more peaceful you are, the more they try to provoke you, to see if the old you is still there. But you no longer live to react, you live to observe. You live not to seek, but to understand. And to them, that seems like avoidance. But in truth, it is letting go. And that gaze of misunderstanding, though painful, is a sacred teacher. Because when you truly walk the path of awakening, you no longer need to be understood. You only need to live in truth. You no longer seek applause. You no longer crave recognition. The only thing you must guard is the sacred flame in your heart, even when the world around you denies its existence. You may ask, why don't they see the transformation in me? Why does my peace seem so strange to them? The answer lies in a hidden truth. The ego fears losing control. Your awakening is not just your own transformation. It disrupts the energetic agreements that old relationships were built on, agreements rooted in shared suffering, emotional dependency, or fixed roles. These begin to dissolve as you wake up. And what hurts your loved ones is not your change, but the way that change shakes their own foundation. Where once you shared to be comforted, now you sit in silence. Where once you agreed to keep the peace, now you choose truth, knowing it may discomfort them. These are not betrayals, but they confront the deep-seated belief that loved ones should remain the same, should not change, should always stay connected in the same way. But true practice dismantles that illusion. You are no longer defined by relationships. You are returning to your formless essence, nameless, role-less, expectation-less. And to those who have not embarked on this path, that is a shock. You become a mirror that no longer reflects their ego, and that absence unsettles them. Once, your presence reinforced their sense of control and familiarity. Now, your silence makes them face their own inner emptiness. True practice dismantles old energetic structures. The Buddha did not choose harmony with the world. He chose truth. And when you live in truth, you can no longer live in falsehood. That is why others feel you have left. But you have not left, you have returned. You need not run away from anyone. But you must accept that your light will not always be welcome, especially where it exposes shadows others are not ready to face. You cannot force others to understand you, just as you cannot force a lotus to bloom before its time. Perhaps one day they will see. Perhaps not in this lifetime. But your path must not waver. The deeper you go, the quieter you become, not from a lack of love, but because you no longer need to prove it. You don't need to express, it is enough to be present. You love your family not by pleasing them, but by not binding them to your expectations. You love in freedom, not control. In allowing, not shaping. But this freedom may feel like distance to those who equate love with attachment. Most people have only known conditional love. To love means to sacrifice, to belong, to be the same. But in the light of Dharma, true love is absolute acceptance. It is the willingness to walk beside someone without trying to change them. And sometimes, that means stepping back, not because you abandon them, but because you honor their journey. You withdraw not to escape, but to ensure your light does not overshadow the light they must one day discover on their own. As you go deeper, you meet another shocking truth. Your awakening reveals the delusion in others, and that makes you a stranger in your own home. In the Nikaya Sutras, the Buddha spoke of a monk's need to step away even from loved ones, if they hinder the path to liberation. This does not mean cutting ties, it means releasing attachment to roles and emotional dependencies. For in ultimate truth, all relationships arise from conditions and cease with their ending. There is no forever. There is no must be. If you still cling to the need to be understood, validated, or appreciated by your loved ones, you have not fully let go. And so, suffering continues. The pain you feel is not from their misunderstanding. It comes from your expectation that they should understand. Look into that pain, shine mindfulness upon it. You will see. It is the echo of ego not yet dissolved. And when you see that clearly, you have already stepped one rung higher toward freedom. You may wonder if you are going the wrong way because the further you walk this path, the lonelier you become. You feel those closest to you withdrawing. But they are not leaving out of hate, they simply no longer recognize the you that is emerging. And it hurts. Yet here is the sacred truth no one told you. The path of awakening is a solitary one. And that solitude is not a mistake, it is the threshold of liberation. No one can fully journey with you into your own mind. No one can awaken for you. Therefore, a part of the path must be walked alone. As you deepen in practice, an invisible distance grows between you and the world. You feel like you've stepped into a different dimension, where noise becomes strange, where emotional conversations feel hollow, where things that once excited you now seem meaningless. You no longer crave social gatherings or small talk. Instead, you seek stillness. You need the quiet. You long for evenings alone, breathing, observing, just being. And in that silence, you realize, you no longer belong where you once did. Not to groups, nor families, nor identities, not because you are above them, but because you now see with the awakened eye. And the awakened cannot live in dreams. You see clearly that the world is not awake, that even those you love are living from fear, desire, conditioning, and memory. And you, with your emptying mind, become an anomaly. They ask, why are you so strange these days? They ask, why so quiet? They don't understand that your silence is wholeness, not lack, that you are living deeply in the moment, no longer chasing anything. This loneliness is not escape. It is sacred shelter, where the mind no longer plays roles, no longer grasps, no longer needs to belong. And you begin to understand why the Buddha left his palace. Not out of coldness, but because only in complete solitude can awakening fully unfold. No one will ever fully understand the invisible sorrow growing within you. A sorrow without name or cause. A quiet realization that everything you once believed in, once chased, now dissolves like mist. And in that mist, you stand, alone, shaking, with nothing to hold. And that is where you begin to see the Dharma. Not from a sutra, not from a teacher, but from the vast emptiness that now envelops you. That emptiness will not destroy you. It will dissolve you, so you may return to something beyond words. Like a monk meditating in the night, with nothing left but breath and awareness. You realize, you are not alone. You are simply vibrating at a frequency others cannot yet hear. And in that moment, loneliness becomes a doorway, a sacred opening into understanding. All relationships are conditions, No one truly belongs to you. No one can walk your entire path with you. And when you release the wish for companionship, you finally walk on your own 2 feet. Each step in mindfulness, though solitary, is more solid than 1,000 steps in a crowd of wandering minds. The Buddha taught in the Anguttara Nikaya, there is no path to liberation without solitude. And that solitude is not about being alone. It is about no longer needing others to complete you. You need no attention, no praise, no agreement. You need only yourself and the Dharma. This aloneness is a trial, not for the faint of heart. It is a fire, burning the last clinging hopes that someone might understand. But when that fire consumes all desire, what remains is a mind so at peace. It no longer demands anything of life. You no longer ask the world to respond. You no longer need family to understand. You no longer need to be called awakened, spiritual, or noble. You are simply a silent being, walking the path toward truth. And this solitude is no longer a wound. It becomes a jewel. Within that jewel is the pure light of freedom. Freedom from roles. Freedom from expectation. Freedom from noise. You have passed through the waves of emotion, thought, and reaction. And now, you stand in the ocean of the mind, no longer swayed by any wave. You are still, but in that stillness, a whole universe is blossoming. And though no one sees it, you see it, and you smile, needing no witness.